Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Over 40% of bus riders here in New York City don't pay the fare.
Back here in our area, and talk about a double whammy. That's what the MTA is now facing. It doesn't know if or when congestion pricing will ever be implemented, which is to provide also money for mass transit, and they're not getting it now. And it's losing big money as well. Every day from fare evaders. Consider this, 40% of bus riders get on board without paying a dime. So what does this all mean? A whopping budget deficit of more than $400 million a year starting in 2027. With the latest, here's Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett.
For every honest rider who boards a New York City bus and pays the fare, there is another rider who sneaks in through the back. In some places, many others. Fare evasion is now so rampant in the transit system that the impact is hitting the bottom line of an agency with a $19 billion budget. MTA Chairman Jano Lieber.
We let people get out of the habit of paying for buses during COVID because we were trying to protect the drivers at the front, and everybody got in the back door and nobody paid. And it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
MTA officials revealed that before the pandemic, fare evasion on the subways was estimated at 4% of riders and 20% on the buses. It's now 14% on the subways and 48% on the buses. In other words, nearly half of bus riders now ride for free, and roughly 1 in 7 on the subways. And not all of them would appear to be of modest means. What's more, real estate tax revenues that help fund the MTA are falling dramatically. In just the next 4 years, the MTA will face budget deficits of $900 million. It's bad news for an agency that's already struggling to recover from the loss of congestion pricing tolls that were intended to provide billions to maintain and upgrade the transit system. Governor Kathy Hochul has promised to find the money. MTA officials say they trust her to do that.
She delivered last year. She's promised to deliver again. And that's her job as the chief executive of the state of New York.
Authorities are cracking down on fare evasion, issuing nearly double the number of $100 tickets year to date than they did last year. But revenue is trending lower at a time when the MTA can't afford to lose a dollar. In Lower Manhattan, NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Now, according to reports from the MTA, the people who run the buses and subways here in New York City, over 40% of people don't pay the bus fare here in New York City. And this has been a problem for the MTA for the last couple of years, as people have been evading paying the bus fare and hopping the train. And as people have avoided paying the fare, what has happened is the MTA has gone into a projected $432 million deficit as related to its 2027 operating budget. Now, this whole problem of people not paying the fare is something that I have witnessed here in New York City as I've waited to get on buses to go to places or waited to meet family members at the bus stop. As I have been at bus stops, I have personally witnessed people go from single individuals going to look to hop on the back of the bus as far back as about the mid-2000s to basically now seeing entire families get on a bus from the back and not pay the fare. Basically, in the last decade and a half, I have seen a culture of individuals believe that they have no real reason to go walk up to the front of the bus to pay a bus fare to ride a bus. And I've even witnessed individuals look to slip through the doors as related to the subway, the emergency exits on the subway, and witness people hopping the turnstiles to get on a train. And this was something that the MTA created for itself as a culture under the dysfunctional leadership of then Mayor Bill de Blasio. Now, then Mayor Bill de Blasio wanted to make the excuse that because people were poor, they couldn't afford to pay the fare. And according to him, because people were poor, this was the reason why so many people were out here looking to hop the trains as related to the turnstiles and get on the back door of the bus and not pay. And as a result of his enabling, this is why the entire situation got progressively worse on most of the buses and subways as related to people not paying the fare. This enabling basically went on under his incompetent leadership. And as this enabling went on, this basically created a culture in communities that people didn't have to pay the fare. And as he created this culture, he basically again enabled people to feel like they were justified in not paying the fares for the buses and the subways. Now, this was further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, a pandemic where Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo and the MTA basically allowed people to ride for free anywhere that they wanted on buses and subways because they wanted to alleviate the economic situation created by the pandemic. However, as we have come out of the pandemic, the efforts to try to get people to pay the fare basically are falling on deaf ears. And the reason why it's falling on deaf ears is because when you go out here and create a situation where you allow people to break boundaries, what you do is condition people to believe that breaking that boundary is fine. And what happens is it becomes next to impossible to go out and try to reestablish that boundary. So basically what people at the MTA now are dealing with is a result of their own dysfunctional leadership, that could not critically think long term about the boundaries they were breaking or the long-term economic impact of those decisions to allow people to break those boundaries they enabled. Because what they were doing when they allowed people to start believing that it was okay to not pay the fare was, again, create a culture where people were feeling that it was their right to believe they were entitled to be able to ride the buses and trains for free. And there's no way to go out here and recondition people to believe that they have that they don't have that right. That's what many of these politicians don't understand. And again, because they couldn't connect dots as related to the long term, they're sitting here wondering how they're going to find money to be able to pay for the bus and subway service of all those people who didn't pay the fare and cover the operating costs of all those individuals. Well, there's no way you can cover those costs because, again, like Pandora's box, once you open the box, you basically let everything come out of the box as related to boundaries, and with everything out, it's going to be next to impossible to get that box back shut and get everything back in that box. It's going to be next to impossible because when it comes to the MTA, there's not enough manpower from law enforcement to be able to station police officers at every stop or station police officers at every bus or every train station every day. I mean, right now, we only have 40,000 officers, and with 40,000 officers, you can't have enough people to police all these buses. So this is just, again, just shows the incompetence of leadership all around, where they're sitting here whining about, oh, over 40% of people don't pay the bus fare, but it was you who enabled people to believe that this behavior was perfectly fine, enabled people to believe that it was perfectly fine because you came up with ideas as related to, oh, people are poor, and as people are poor, this is your excuse. But when you look at a lot of those people these days who are not paying the fare, they're wearing expensive sneakers, they have expensive phones, and many of these people actually are working. They have the money to pay the fare, but the whole thing is they don't believe they have to pay the fare. They believe that they don't have to pay the fare because this was the policy that was established by Bill de Blasio, established by Andrew Cuomo, and reinforced by the MTA, which wanted to go out here and create the Omni system to replace the Metro card, wanted the Omni system where people could pay through the back door. Again, there's no way to verify that people pay through the back door, basically creating policies that undermine the MTA. And what they want to do, as they basically are their own worst enemy, is blame the public and look to use the excuse of congestion pricing as a way to avoid their incompetence as related to mismanaging the MTA. That's what I see right here. What they want to do is say that because of the fare evasion, they don't have the money, and this is a reason why they need congestion pricing. They need to go and find the money from the driver to offset the cost of the bus policies and train policies they established, and they want the drivers to pay for their incompetence. And that's just not how it goes as related to business, because again, looking to try to find a way to shoehorn congestion pricing on New York City basically would do more long-term damage to New York's economy, because as you go after the driver to make them pay for Pookie and Ray Ray, who are going out and slipping his entire family through the back door of the bus, or hopping the train and riding for free, what you're doing is basically making it where the people who work and drive into the city, basically what they do is get de-incentivized to come to the city, because if it costs $15 a day, which is going to come up to $100 a week just to go to work, what those people will do is start looking to adapt. And as they look to adapt, what will happen is the MTA will lose more money long term. They will lose more money long term because what people will do is they'll stop coming into the city. And as they stop coming into the city, especially on the weekend, that's going to hurt your whole base of travel and tourism, and hurt your overall business. It's going to hurt your overall business because as those people stop coming in, what you're going to do is start to lose that tax revenue, and many of the businesses are going to lose their business revenue because the city will be too expensive to travel in. Moreover, many employers, what they will do is start looking to start further telecommuting their workers, because it's just going to cost too much for them to commute into the city. I mean, workers who live in New Jersey, Connecticut, and even as far as Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, this doesn't incentivize them to come into the city. I mean, when you've got a $15 toll on top of a $15 congestion pricing fee, that's $30 to come into the city. And at 5 days a week, at $30 a day, I mean, 30 times 5 is, 3 times 5, that's like $150 just to come into the city. And unless you're making 7 figures, that's just too much money. That's just too much money to come into the city. Again, paying a toll on a bridge and then having to pay another toll for congestion pricing. That's again something that would kill a business and kill the employer, New York's ability to attract employees. So long term, what they want to do is, again, try to find a way to shame us into believing congestion pricing will help the MTA, but it's not going to help the MTA, because the problem is not any sort of thing that's related to money. It's about managing that money. And clearly the MTA has incompetent people, and those incompetent people can't manage money. And since they can't manage money, they make a mess of things and then want to say, oh, well, we have 40% of people not paying the fare. Well, again, I'll repeat it once more. Who enabled those policies? Critical question I want to ask the people at the MTA. Who enabled those policies? Because it was Bill de Blasio, Andrew Cuomo, and even Kathy Hochul who co-signed this policy. And what the MTA wants to do is try to find a way to either try to shame us into congestion pricing or raise the fare, not understanding that people already aren't paying the fare because you've already reached what they call in economics a price threshold. And when you reach a price threshold, basically, you can no longer make any more money at that point. And that's where the MTA is right now. They were at that point at $275 for the fare, and they tried to raise it to $290. And again, we saw the number of people going out here and not paying the fare go up. And even worse, what we're seeing is a decline in bus service, like here in New York, on lines all throughout the city. But they say that they can't find enough bus operators. This is what comes up on their website right now. If you go out here and just even type this up in rush hour, it'll come up. They'll come up in rush hour. They'll say, oh, we have a shortage of drivers, so you have to expect longer times. I mean, this is what comes up, but they want to sit there and tell you, oh, we don't have enough. We need more money. But the whole thing is, the reason why you don't have money is because you have incompetent leadership that just cannot manage itself, but wants to tell you that, oh, we need more money, we need help, we need things. But the whole thing is, this is your lack of leadership all around. Again, the problem isn't the money, it's the leadership here at the MTA, because 40% of people are hopping the buses because this was a culture that was enabled for 15 years and further exacerbated by the pandemic. But they'll sit there and say, oh, we have these deficits, but the whole reason why you have deficits is because you don't have leadership that understands concepts like logistics, doesn't understand concepts like going out and understanding how human behavior operates, doesn't understand that if you want a certain kind of behavior, you can't enable that behavior and then hope that people will be good and honest and look to pay for things. No, when you enable bad behavior in bad people, that makes them, and where they become encouraged to participate in more bad behavior. Moreover, it encourages other people to participate in bad behavior, and that's why you get 40% of people not paying their fares. But you can't explain this to the leadership of the MTA or those in the Blue Party like Kathy Hochul, who run the MTA. She basically thought she could go out here and let congestion pricing pass until she realized the long-term damage it would do to New York's economy and possibly their elections in the future. She didn't really think critically, and again, we have people trying to force this congestion pricing as a solution, but it's not going to be a solution. It's just going to drive New York further down the hole into becoming the hellhole it was in the 70s and the 80s, where the MTA was near rock bottom. I remember riding those trains covered in graffiti. I remember the just absolutely horrible bus service. And sadly, what I see happening here is a vicious cycle that's happening as the Blue Party has taken power over again, where the quality of life basically has gone into a state of decline because these individuals do not know how to lead or set direction. I mean, even with programs like the Fairfares program, you still have people hopping the train, and again, hopping the train because this boundary was not taught to that individual, not taught to people that they needed to respect the authority of people as related to bus operators who cannot do anything anymore, because if they engage these individuals as related to them not paying the fare, it puts their life on the line. So basically what's happening here is what happens when you don't set boundaries with people and don't have standards. This is something I talk about in depth in my book, The Man Crisis. When you don't set boundaries with people, they step all over you, and they step all over you because you basically told everyone you'd be a pushover. And again, having pushovers in politics can hurt a nation because you have a pushover in charge. And again, pushovers just allow other people to get away with stuff because they don't set boundaries. And again, when you have a pushover in place, it leads to people pushing things over to the point where a company just can't operate. Again, basic economics, you have to set boundaries with people. You have to set boundaries for people as related to how they treat you, set boundaries as related to how things are priced, set boundaries as related to your business, as related to public or private business. You have to set boundaries, because if you don't set boundaries, what happens is people just step all over your boundaries, and that basically hurts the operations of your business, whether it be municipal or private. And when it comes to the MTA, they are a major mess. And again, when you have 40% of people, again, not paying the bus fare, it really, again, eventually hurts the service sooner rather than later. And again, this is what happens when you hire people who are like beta males or feminists, who don't have critical thinking or long-term thinking. They never really think about the long-term ramifications of their decisions and never really think about how it impacts people in the long term. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to help me be able to make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.